In my last video, I spent time looking over affordable 70s inspired sports watches, and one model that I looked into was the main Manhattan Ultra Thin. It has a beautifully arranged thin movement which you can see through the exhibition caseback. That got me thinking about my list videos. I've never made one related to dimensions before, and so here it is, a video highlighting what I think are the best thin watches money can buy under $1,000. If you're not sure of the appeal of a thin watch, I'll just preface this by saying that it's likely to be lighter, fit under a cuff easier, and often feel a little more refined to wear, as you know, some engineering thought has gone into it. As usual though, there's a set of rules I'm sticking to for this video, and they are: the watch must be thin. Now, according to a quick online search, the average watch size ranges from 8 to 12 mil in thickness, and anything under 8 mil can be considered thin. So that will be what we use as our metric for a thin watch in this video. The watch also needs to be available at less than $1,000, which somewhat ironically rules out the inspiration for this video, the Manhattan. And finally, each brand will only feature once on the list for the sake of variety. I'll also say that it's considerably easier to make thin quartz watches than mechanical or automatics. So I've tried my best to include a few models that aren't quartz on the list, though that isn't easy with the budget restraints, especially at the lower end of the range. With all that said, let's get into the video. There is definitely some recency bias going on with this watch for me, as I've recently been filming it for an upcoming review. I researched long and hard to find alternatives, but even the F91W actually comes in over the 8mm limit by 0.5mm. The A158W comes in just on that limit, and I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is the thinnest watch that Casio currently produce. It isn't really possible to find a thin watch for less than this from a trusted brand. Even Far Eastern models that claim to be thinner would cost more to get into your hand than this. An absolute bargain from a brand you can trust. Any of you who have seen my last few videos will find it incredibly unsurprising that one of the first models on my list is a gold Seiko tank, as I keep talking up the idea of a gold square watch for my collection. Really, I'm pining for a Kuo Royal Smith, but there is a much stronger vintage feel with this Seiko. It's a solar quartz movement, but with no second hand, you're never going to notice the difference, and it looks for all the world like a Cartier, but at the price of a G-Shock. The party piece of this watch is its thickness of 6mm. I'm not sure if it's possible to get a classier thin square dress watch from a respected brand any cheaper than this, but if it is, I'd love to hear from you about it in the comments. At a certain point, thin watches start to get very, very expensive. For example, the current record holder, the Richard Mille collaboration with Ferrari, is 1.7mm thick, and it costs north of $2 million. While the engineering is not as impressive, for a small percentage of a fraction of that cost, you can get the thinnest watch featured in this video, the Swatch Metal Knit. It's a small watch at 34mm in diameter, but it's the 4.3mm thickness that's the real talking point of this model. Though listed at 4.3mm, there are actually review sites out there that have measured the watch at 3.9mm. Either way, if thinness is the goal, this is a great option. Now in the end, I didn't keep the watch you're seeing in this footage, but I think that has a lot more to do with the colourway I chose than anything else. This is the Adventurine model of the Ultra Thin, and the issue I had with it is the reflective handset, which in some lighting conditions makes the time almost impossible to read. However, that isn't an issue with other models that have contrasting colours between their hands and dial. This is a quartz movement, but it really is razor thin, with the watch totaling 6mm in thickness. You're also getting sports watch styling, and depending on the model you go for, a textured, sunburst or gemstone dial. There really is a lot to like here, and the price is very affordable. One thing you'll no doubt pick up on by the end of the video is that quite a few of the models on the list are small in diameter to match how thin they are. To buck that trend, I've picked out the Tissot Tradition, which is a quartz dress watch with classic styling and is 7.5mm thick. Going against the grain of the video, it's 42mm in diameter. Now, many would argue, me included, that a dress watch should be smaller than this. But small is a matter of perspective, and while 42mm on me would look a little out of place, on those blessed with larger wrists, this is a good opportunity to get involved with a thin timepiece. The Stiletto has been discontinued as a men's range, but it is still possible to find them with some efficient browsing. The EcoDrive element does add a little to this model, as you aren't going to have to replace the battery anywhere near as often as you might with a regular quartz. What's really impressive about this model is just how thin they've been able to go, while still delivering a solid design, respected movement, stainless steel and sapphire crystal. This watch is only 4.7mm thick, making it the thinnest conventional looking sports watch to feature in the video. You're going to have to play fast and loose with the rules on this one, because the watch case does measure in just under 8mm, but the dome crystal takes it over that limit. Imagining for a second that you decided to buy one and replace the crystal with something completely flat, this watch owes its thinness to the micro rotor beating away inside it. It isn't exactly quiet, but you aren't likely to see a more interesting movement below this price point outside of maybe something from Seagull. All of this avoids the fact that the watch itself is absolutely beautiful. I would say that to me this version has maybe a few too many polished surfaces, so I would be tempted to look at the roulette versions that are more brushed. This is actually the second time the Heritage Gent has come up on one of these lists. And while I try my best to avoid repetition for the sake of variety, finding a thin automatic watch for less than $1,000 is no easy task, and the Baroncelli Heritage Gent happens to tick that box nicely. With Swiss made on the dial, a blued second hand, beautiful classic styling, and an automatic Etat caliber, all wrapped up in a case that boasts an exhibition caseback and still manages to only be 7.3mm thick. One thing I will say is that the country I'm in currently has some internet filtering that prevents me from using a lot of the price comparison tools I would normally look to at home. Normally, I wouldn't feel comfortable awarding the recommendation of the video to a second-hand model, but I do think if you shop around for a deal, you will be able to pick one of these up for just under $1,000. So I'm happy to give this model the nod. Given the Bauhaus principles of rational and functional design, it stands to reason that some of the mechanical models you're going to see at the top end of this list are designed with that aesthetic in mind. In terms of functionality, there really isn't many reasons for a watch to be thick. So, in the case of the Stoa, it isn't. The Antea KS comes in at 6.9mm thick thanks to the ETA 7001 hand-wound movement at its heart. The model in question is actually over 10 years old at this point and originally retailed for $775. I was able to find new old stock models available online for less than $100 more than that, which is still less than buying the modern equivalent. If you really want a thin watch in this style but don't want to shell out, you could look towards the second-hand market for the Chinese-made Redina R005, which is also mechanical, 7.5mm thick, takes a lot of the design cues, but would be several $100s less. To fit under the $1,000 requirement, you're going to be shopping second-hand for earlier Tangente models, and unfortunately you're very unlikely to get an exhibition caseback at this price point. An exhibition caseback on a dress watch doesn't necessarily feel right to me anyway, but this is a beautifully finished movement, so it is a bit of a shame not to see it. The real party piece of the Tangente is being a mere 6.6mm thick, despite the in-house, hand-built mechanical alpha caliber beating away inside it, which manages to come in at only 2.6mm thick itself. The only reason I haven't bought one of these is the elongated lugs, which put me off, but if they are to your tastes, this watch is a real gem. Try as I might, I couldn't find automatic movement watches that fit either under the budget or under the 8mm restriction apart from the Mido, without having to stretch the rules like with the Baltic. There are, however, a few other models that come close that I would like to quickly mention if a thin automatic is what you're after. The Jazzmaster Thin Line Auto from Hamilton and the Frederic Constant Slimline are two good places to start your hunt. As for this list, it's a wrap for now, but let me know what you think in the comments below. Are there good picks here you agree with, or are there other gems out there that I've missed? As ever, thank you for watching. If you've enjoyed what you've seen or found it informative, consider dropping the video a like and subscribing if you want to see more content like this.